House Bill 1267, clerk will read.
An act relating to investigation of potential criminal conduct arising from police
Last
use of
line.
force. Appropriations Act. This act is null and void.
With the consent of the House, the bill will be substituted as recommended by the Public Safety Committee. Hearing no objection, so ordered. There are amendments. Amendment number 295 has been withdrawn. Amendment number 263, clerk will read.
On page 2, line 27, after 5,
Last line.
insert, committed by involved officers as well as.
The good member from the 47th District, Representative Entenmann, to move the amendment.
Madam Speaker, I move Amendment 263.
It has been moved and seconded that amendment number 263 be adopted. Remarks, Representative Entenmann.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a clarifying amendment that was brought to me from the members of the members of the body from the city of Tacoma. They wanted to make sure that an incident that has happened in their city would not be repeated. This amendment, may I read, Madam Speaker?
Please proceed.
Thank you. This amendment will do three things. It will modify the provisions pertaining to the jurisdiction of the Office of the Independent Investigator by providing that the office the authority to investigate deadly force cases applied to any incident involving deadly force by an involved officer against or upon a person who is in custody or out of custody. Provides that in custody refers to a person who is under the physical control of general authority of Washington State Law Enforcement Agency, the limited authority of a Washington State Law Enforcement Agency, or a city, county, or regional adult or juvenile institution, correctional facility, jail, holding or detention facility. Additionally, it provides that the officer involved in the incident must immediately, I apologize. Includes the timing of, the officer must include directions to the agencies that include incidents of force and injuries and other circumstances must be reported to the Office of the Independent Investigator, including the timing of such reports, provided that any incident involving substantial bodily harm, great bodily harm, or death is reported to the Office of the Independent Investigator. It also modifies a requirement that the advisory board to the Office of the Independent Investigator should do tracking to see if we should include other things that would be covered by the Office of Independent Investigation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there further remarks? The good member from the 14th District, Representative Mossbrooker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the good gentle lady from the 47th for bringing this amendment forward. Unfortunately, I respectfully ask for a no this evening. This bill expands way beyond the underlying bill. This new amendment does, and we're hoping to address this later in final passage, but we're worried about taking this in phases and trying to find success along the way. The underlying bill has over a $60 million fiscal note over the next 4 years, and we want to try to make sure we keep this reined in and find success along the way. The other struggle is that I-940 addressed this, and we still haven't finished implementing that the people have spoken. So I respectfully, unfortunately, ask for a no this evening.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the House is adoption of Amendment number 263. The Speaker will divide the House. The Speaker is about to start the roll call machine. The Speaker has started the roll call machine. Has every member voted who wishes to vote? The Speaker is about to lock the roll call machine. The Speaker has locked the roll call machine. Will the clerk please announce the total?
Madam Speaker, there are 55 yeas, 38 nays, 2 excused.
The amendment is adopted. There are further amendments. Amendment number 269, clerk will read.
On page 9, line 7, after racial, strike equity and insert equality.
The good member from the 8th District, Representative Clippert, to move the amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move adoption of Amendment 269.
Amendment number 269 has been moved and seconded. Remarks, Representative Clippert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to present to you 5 points. 5 points that speak directly to this amendment, directly to why we should replace the word equity with the word equality in this underlying bill. Number 1, Madam Speaker, in a committee that I've sat on for years, the chair of that committee, during the interim a year or two ago, invited some PhD professors to come and talk to the committee and define and differentiate between the words equality and equity. And those 2 PhD professors from different universities did a fantastic job. One of the things, the one who talked about equality gives each and every citizen in the United States of America equal rights. They should be treated equally, no matter what the color of their skin, religious preference, whatever. Each and every citizen should be treated equally. And then they discussed the word equity. And they said equity has to do with numbers. It's a count, making sure that the numbers are balanced. And so that's what those 2 PhD professors from 2 different universities said was the difference between equality and equity. Equality, every single citizen gets treated the same. Equity has to do with numbers. Number 2, July 4th, 1776, 56 men joined together and agreed on the language for our Declaration of Independence. Towards the beginning of that document, that agreed upon language, are found these words. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, Madam Speaker. Now today, if it was written today, they might say all men and women, or they might say all individuals, but each and every one created equal, not equitable. Point number 3, United States Constitution, 14th Amendment demands that each and every citizen have equal protection under the law. Equal protection under the law is required by our 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, not equitable protection, equal protection. Point number 4, August 28th, 1963, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King shared these words. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will no longer be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Not judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And in closing, point number 5, Madam Speaker, it was December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. Rosa Parks boarded a bus. Now the rules were whites in front, blacks in back. But Rosa Parks that day chose to take a seat in the front of that bus. Now, obviously, Madam Speaker, I wasn't there that day. All I can rely upon is the stories that I've read over and over again about that momentous day. Initially, nobody said anything about it until the bus started to fill. And then a white man went to Rosa Parks and asked that she move from her seat so that he could sit there. Rosa Parks refused to move, Madam Speaker. And in interest of time, we all know the rest of the story. It sparked one of the greatest civil rights movements in the history of our world. Here's what I believe to be true about Rosa Parks' actions that day, Madam Speaker. She didn't do that so that the next busload of people, the bus driver would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, looking at the color of people's skin and counting to make sure there was an equal number sitting in equal positions around the bus. I believe that Rosa Parks did that day so that each and every person in the United States of America could choose to sit wherever they want to sit. Everyone treated equally, not equitably, which requires a count, a certain number of people in a certain position upon the bus. No, equally. We can all make our own free choices. So, Madam Speaker, whether it's a job or an education, our Constitution, civil rights movements that we all believe in have been done and written, our Declaration of Independence, so that each and every citizen in the United States of America will be treated equally, not equitably. That's why I propose to you today with this amendment that this bill, should it pass and be signed into law, that a lens of equality should be used when these investigations are conducted, not a lens of equity, because that requires us to look at the color of someone's skin. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King spoke against that. He wanted his children to live in a nation where they would be judged by the quality of their character, not the color of their skin. So I say, Madam Speaker, let's do exactly what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King suggested. Let's judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Let's don't do numbers counts. Let's treat each and every citizen in the United States of America equally, and let's conduct these investigations under a lens of equality, not equity. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further remarks, the good member from the 37th District, Representative Santos.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will begin, first of all, by acknowledging, I know this to be true about the good gentleman from the 8th District, that he truly believes in the concept of equality. I do know that, and I acknowledge that, and I hope that we will all acknowledge that. However, that doesn't stop me, Madam Speaker, from asking that we turn down this amendment, because I think that part of what is going on here is a mistaken sense of the application of equity and equality. It's true, Madam Speaker, that both equality and equity deal with the notion of fairness, but equality achieves this by striving to treat all the same way without regard to what individuals might need. Equity, on the other hand, achieves this by treating people differently according to their need. And some would even argue that it is in this differential treatment we find the key to actually achieving equality. Madam Speaker, let me explain. I know that you are familiar with what is often referred to as the curb cut effect. It is an idea around targeted universalism. It's where the effect is named after the idea of today we walk around in cities and we have these little cutouts on the corner that didn't used to exist, when I was a kid, when I was a young adult, even when I was a middle-aged adult, but they exist today. And it's there because we recognize that people who must navigate streets in wheelchairs could not navigate a curb. And so engineers created what is called a curb cut. It was targeted to ensure that people in wheelchairs could get around freely like others, like me, who has the use of both legs. And in finding in finding that solution for our friends, our colleagues, our workers who must rely on a wheelchair for their mobility, we found, or the engineers found, that lots of other people are using it too. Men and women who are pushing baby strollers, some of our elders who are using shopping carts to get to the store. Heck, some of our kids who are skateboarding through the streets and trying to cross busy streets in the cities. You know, Madam Speaker, I'm recalling that I don't necessarily watch a lot of TV, except for lately I'm watching a lot of late TV because I have to eat dinner, and that's what I'm watching. And there's this ad on TV where the punchline is, "Do you see me? Do you see me?" And I think that this is the point that I want to underscore, is that too often we ignore what makes us individuals and what makes our communities unique, and expect everyone to have the same set of perspectives and experiences. And that simply is not true. Yet just yesterday, I think the good gentleman and I were engaged in a conversation about my identity. What makes me different? The fact that I look at things differently because I am a woman, because I have different experiences as a person of color. That means that I'm not necessarily going to look at the same situation with the same eyes that the good gentleman from the 8th District has. Equity lenses are tools for identifying and eliminating those discriminatory, and by that I mean unfair, assumptions and disparities that exist around us. It is a tool of critical analysis, Madam Speaker, that requires in-depth inquiry to understand the complexities of culture, of communications, of conditions, of experience. It is the basis, Madam Speaker, for us to check our assumptions, testing the universalism of our truths and our facts. Are we asking the right questions? Are we bringing the diversity of perspectives to the matter at hand? Madam Speaker, this is what an equity lens brings us. It brings us richness. It brings us more perspectives to sift out what is truth, and hopefully to come up with better answers and with better solutions. Madam Speaker, an equity lens is what we need, and I ask you to support an equity lens by turning down this amendment.
Are there further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the House is adoption of Amendment 269. The Speaker will divide the House. The Speaker is about to start the roll call machine. The Speaker has started the roll call machine. Has every member who wishes to vote voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? The Speaker is about to lock the roll call machine. The Speaker has locked the roll call machine. Will the clerk please announce the totals?
Madam Speaker, there are 33 yeas, 56 nays, 2 excused.
The amendment is not adopted. There are further amendments. Amendment number 276. Will the clerk please read?
Strike everything after the enacting clause and insert the following.
Last line.
Correct the title.
The good member from the 8th District, Representative Clippert, to move the amendment.
Why, thank you, Madam Speaker. Last amendment to the last bill of the evening. I move adoption of Amendment 276.
Amendment number 276 has been moved and seconded. Remarks. Representative Clippert.
Madam Speaker. This is a striking amendment. And with this amendment, what we're trying to achieve is a word that we've heard used many times this year in the legislature: balance. We want these investigations to be fair and balanced. And Madam Speaker, I request your permission. This bill has many pieces to it, but I just want to emphasize 2 major pieces to this bill and would like to read from the striking amendment itself, with your permission.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I want to read to you the members that are, according to this striking amendment, should be a part of the Washington Deadly Force Investigation Agency governed board. It talks about 2 sheriffs, 2 police chiefs, the chief of Washington State Patrol, prosecuting attorney, 1 person employed by city law, and 1 person employed by county law. But this is the point I want to get to, Madam Speaker. These are the names I want you to hear. Balance. We seek balance in these investigations. The executive director of the Commission on African American Affairs, the executive director of the Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs, the executive director of the Commission of Hispanic Affairs, the executive director of the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs, 1 person representing families of individuals against whom a Washington peace officer used deadly force appointed by the governor, and 2 members of the general public appointed by the governor. Fair and balanced. That's what we seek with this amendment, this striking amendment. And lastly, Madam Speaker, this striking amendment seeks to make sure that the operations conducted are isolated from bias and political influence. Isolated from bias and political influence so that they're fair, balanced, and just. Strongly recommend this striking amendment to you so that we have fair, unbiased, unpolitically motivated investigations conducted in these issues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there further remarks? The good member from the 45th District, Representative Goodman.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Respectfully rising in opposition to this striking amendment. The amendment strikes the entire underlying bill. The underlying bill took many, many months of deliberate development as part of the governor's task force on independent investigations. And that task force came up with a thorough product that this striking amendment weakens in several respects. The community input in the governor's task force was very important, particularly those from the families who have loved ones that are lost from interactions with the police. This striking amendment does not improve the investigation protocol sufficiently. The striking amendment sets up a freestanding state agency, which the run of case law and constitutional authority makes it very questionable. The underlying bill places the Office of Independent Investigations within the governor's office, which the line of case law and constitutional authority does support. The striking amendment establishes a law enforcement agency. This is contrary to the wishes of the community. They don't want the police investigating the police. They've been dissatisfied and disappointed with the investigations of use of deadly force. The board that is established in the striking amendment contrasts sharply with the board, the advisory board in the underlying bill. Really not enough community participation, we might say token community membership. Current certified peace officers would be authorized to conduct investigations under the striking amendment, and this is also unacceptable. The underlying bill provides that those with law enforcement experience may conduct investigations, but not current certified peace officers because of the potential conflicts of interest. In addition, the striking amendment limits the scope of this office, preventing, for instance, additional investigation and even arrest for tampering with evidence, for intimidating witnesses, and for taking other action that would make sure that the investigation was complete. In addition, the independent investigation teams that exist around the state now that will be working with the Office of Independent Investigations, it's not clear what role they would play. And this is just one example of the lack of specificity in the striking amendment that makes this attempted solution insufficient. The community members would not be satisfied, and we need to stick with this very well-worked bill that took, again, months to develop under a governor's task force with lots of involvement from all parties. So I respectfully ask we not adopt this striking amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further remarks? Seeing none, the question before the House is adoption of Amendment 276. The Speaker will divide the House. The Speaker is about to start the roll call machine. The Speaker has started the roll call machine. Has every member who wishes to vote voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? The Speaker is about to lock the roll call machine. The Speaker has locked the roll call machine. Will the clerk please announce the totals?
Madam Speaker, there are 36 yeas, 54 nays, 2 excused.
The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments. With the consent of the House, the rules will be suspended and engrossed substitute House Bill 1267 will be advanced to third reading. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Engrossed substitute House Bill 1267 on third reading and final passage. Remarks. The good member from the 47th District, Representative Entenmann.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, before you, we have a piece of legislation that, if passed, will set up an independent investigative body that will look at the use of deadly force and hopefully bring a clear and concise and fair investigation when the use of deadly force occurs. A year ago, a member of our community lost his life in an interaction with the police in Tacoma. Because of that, the governor decided to stand up a task force with community members, law enforcement, families who had lost their loved ones to police violence. And it was not an easy thing to do. I was not a member of the task force, but I was closely involved in the work that was done. Out of this task force, there were recommendations. There were 2 recommendations. One was for an independent investigative body that would come into a community when there was an incident, immediately take over jurisdiction and do a thorough investigation so that we could rebuild trust that when someone lost their lives at the hands of a police officer, that it could be investigated fairly and prosecuted if necessary. The other part of what the task force was tasked to do was to have independent prosecutions. We had a bill, we made it through committee, we did not have enough time. But these 2 things together, we hope will rebuild trust in the justice system in Washington State. What I learned was what the community wants is a place where they feel people who live their lives at the hands of police will not go through what they consider to be a character assassination. Instead, we will have a clear, fair, and equitable investigation as to why deadly force was used and why someone lost their lives at the hands of what we consider to be a public safety officer. This bill is just another step toward building and rebuilding trust in our community. This bill is one more step towards having a just and equitable public safety system in Washington State. I ask, Madam Speaker, that you support this legislation so that we can move down that road toward justice for everyone in Washington State. Thank you.
Further remarks, the good member from the 14th District, Representative Mossbrooker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I completely agree that we need to rebuild trust in the state of Washington between law enforcement and between our communities. We need to restore that trust in the justice system. Unfortunately, we offered an amendment which we thought was more balanced, that was more fair. It's difficult for us to put complicated cases by law enforcement in the hands of civilians without the balance of law enforcement officers who do the work, so that we can share each other's lens. We've had great negotiations in the Public Safety Committee, Madam Speaker, and I'm very grateful to the chair as well as prime sponsors in the committee throughout all the bills. But I feel like this bill isn't quite ready. I feel like that there's new ways and better ways that we can rebuild that trust. I-940 passed by what the people wanted, and it was not even a year ago, it was barely a year ago, and we haven't fully developed those investigative tactics. So we feel like, again, we're changing the rules, we're changing the way that we do it, but the people had spoken, they had told us what they wanted. We also struggle with this bill on, under this bill, that the Office of Investigation chooses which cases. So it's not all certain cases, it's just some cases. So we want to make sure that that's balanced and there's a formula to know which cases will be under review. Also concerned about the fiscal note. This is, $60 million over 4 years, and there was a 72-page fiscal note on this. So we want to make sure that when we already have a process, it might be a better idea to stay with I-940's recommendations that people spoke about to investigate. We know that there are some bad police officers and fully feel like they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We understand that, and we want to do everything we can in a bipartisan way to get there. We just feel like this might not be it tonight. And I really hope that the good woman from the 47th continues to work across and to reach out to us to give our lens as well as the other lens, and make sure that we can do everything we can to make sure that we help those families who are heartbroken, and our heart breaks for them. The system is not working. We agree that there should be police reform. We want something that has no political motivation, and some feel that by putting this in the governor's office, you're already not helping restore that trust. So unfortunately, regrettably, we will see no's tonight, and I think that if we work together, we can build this trust together in many different ways, and I do appreciate the good woman from the 47th bringing it forward tonight.
Further remarks, the good member from the 8th District, Representative Clippert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My heart is breaking today with what I see happening on this House floor. Number one, I want to thank the gentlelady who just spoke, both of the gentleladies who just spoke before me. I've done law enforcement for 27 plus years now. Fortunately, I've never had to be involved in a lethal use of force. I hope and pray that I never have to. I don't know. I've worked on both sides of the state, both Pierce County and Benton County Sheriff's Departments. I have never met an officer who was their goal to use lethal force when they went to work that day. We all go to work wanting to do our job very, very well, to serve the community well, and we want to go home to our families at the end of the day. The direction I see this bill taking us is the opposite direction of what I believe the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks were working for. They didn't want people to be judged by the color of their skin and a numbers count to take place, and certain people have to sit in certain places to meet a numbers count. They wanted each and every citizen to be treated equally. And that's what our Constitution calls for. That's what our Declaration of Independence calls for. This bill seems to suggest that now when I go to work each day, if I need to keep a numbers count, that if I do a particular number of traffic stops on a particular number of people with a particular color of skin, I better make sure that I stop a particular number of people that different color skin, so that I'm not accused of not being equitable. Rather than watch the quality of their character as they're driving their vehicle, I got to now look at the color of the skin of the driver of the vehicle. That's not what Rosa Parks or the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wanted. They simply wanted everyone to be treated equally, and that's not the direction this bill takes us. So with that in mind, because I appreciate the civil rights movement that took place after Rosa Parks took her stand, after Martin Luther King took his stand and gave his tremendous speech, this goes the other direction. Not equality, it seeks a numbers game of equity. And that breaks my heart, because I don't want me or any law enforcement officer to start doing a numbers count every day when they go to work. So I'll be voting no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further remarks, the good member from the 11th District, Representative Hackney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would first like to thank the gentle lady from the 47th Legislative District for bringing this bill. The guts of this bill is that the most difficult part of solving complex problems is our inability to even try. But that's not what happened with this bill. There was a task force that spoke to victims of police violence and their families, representatives of communities most impacted by police violence, and even law enforcement agents and their representatives. The goal of those conversations was not consensus, because to reach consensus, we would have had to make sacrifices that would dilute the objective of this bill. The goal was collaboration, and that's exactly what this bill is the product of. The soul of this bill is the recognition that police-involved incidents of lethal force have not and cannot be investigated competently or objectively without highly trained investigators that are truly independent from the subjects of the investigation. The heart of this bill is that we have lost the trust of communities most impacted by police violence, and the understanding that we cannot police communities without their consent. Our criminal justice system requires community members to act as witnesses and jurors. Without them, no criminal case would be successful. And finally, the brains of this bill is that we must take action now to restore the trust of the community by developing new investigation procedures conducted by non-law enforcement agents in order to do the work of the people. And because of the soul, the heart, the guts, and the brains of this bill, Madam Speaker, I ask this body to pass this bill today and to make history in the state of Washington.
The question before the House is final passage of engrossed substitute House Bill 1267. Do the whips need to be recognized to excuse members? Does not appear so. The Speaker is about to start the roll call machine. The Speaker has started the roll call machine. Has every member voted? Representative Chambers, Representative Kretz, Representative Levitt, Representative Stokesbury, Representative Kretz, Representative Levitt, Representative Levitt. Representative Levitt, would you like to vote orally?
Yes, I vote aye.
Representative Levitt votes aye. Does any member wish to change their vote? The Speaker is about to lock the roll call machine. The Speaker has locked the roll call machine. Will the clerk please take the record?
Madam Speaker, there are 57 yeas, 39 nays, 2 excused.
Having received a constitutional majority, substitute and gross substitute House Bill 1267 is declared passed.